This happened a few months ago. I was back in Ashtown, after years away, trying to piece together the town's old stories for a museum exhibition. I always liked history, but I never thought I'd end up chasing ghostly legends. Looking back, I had no idea what I was getting into. I remember sitting in the dusty archives, going through old journals and documents. It was just another day at the museum, poring over faded pages and soaking in the past. But then I found this old journal. The handwriting was shaky, smudged ink, making it hard to read. The author wrote about a horse, a beast that once confronted the devil in the fields. A chill ran down my spine. I wanted to dismiss it, but I couldn't shake that feeling. As I read on, there were warnings for anyone who dared dig into the horse's legend. I tried to ignore the impulse to put the journal down. My curiosity was too strong. Maybe I thought I could uncover the truth, but I should have known better. I decided to explore the fields mentioned in the journal. From the moment I stepped outside, something felt different. The air was thick. I walked past rusty machinery and old barns, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. I shivered when I spotted strange symbols carved into the trees. They looked almost alive, whispering something I couldn't understand. That night, I had dreams that felt too real. I saw shadows moving outside my window, darting away when I tried to look closer. I woke up in a cold sweat, unsure if I was still dreaming. I tried to shake it off, but the next morning the museum felt off. It was quieter than usual. I thought I heard whispers, soft voices fading before I could catch any words. I talked to a few farmers around town, hoping to learn more. They quickly changed the subject whenever I mentioned the horse. Their eyes showed fear. I felt unsettled. It was like stepping into a room where everyone was hiding something. I couldn't understand why they wouldn't talk. Then one night, alone in the museum, I heard those whispers again. They were clearer this time. I followed the sound down the dark hallway. My heart raced. I was sure someone was there. I turned the corner and stopped. I saw a shadow hunched over, just out of sight. Then it vanished. I stood frozen, convincing myself I was imagining things. But I wasn't sure. The legend was real, wasn't it? I felt like I was in over my head. Days passed. I kept searching for answers. The shadow returned, and I heard it whisper my name. I felt my breath quicken. I wanted to scream, but couldn't. I felt trapped, drawn into something dark and big. I turned, ready to face whatever was behind me, but there was nothing, only darkness. The next day I felt a mix of dread and determination. I couldn't ignore what was happening any longer. I made up my mind to visit the old barn where the journal mentioned the horse had last been seen. I hoped to find something, anything, that would shed light on the mystery that surrounded it. As I walked to the barn, the air felt heavier. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches forming sharp shadows on the ground. I shook off the feeling of being watched. I reminded myself that I was here for answers, not just to quail at shadows. When I reached the barn, it looked more dilapidated than I remembered. Its wood was warped and splintered, the roof sagging like a weary old man. I cautiously stepped inside, the floorboards creaking beneath me. The stale scent of hay clung to the air. I noticed footprints leading deeper into the darkness. My pulse quickened. Had someone else been here? I followed the tracks, squinting into the dim light. The whispers from the museum echoed in my mind, and the fear began to creep back in. I tried to convince myself I was just following a curious raccoon or something. As I approached the rear of the barn, I caught sight of something shiny on the ground. I bent down, and when I touched it, I felt a jolt of energy race through me. A horseshoe. It was covered in mud but still gleaming. This had to be a sign. I examined it closely and felt a chill run through me. It was different, far too old and worn for a modern horse. Then I noticed the ground around the horseshoe had something carved into it. It was hard to make out with the dirt, but I couldn't dismiss the faint symbols echoing those I had seen in the woods. A knot formed in my stomach. Maybe I was digging too deep. Suddenly, I felt a rush of wind sweep through the barn, blowing my hair back and swirling the dust in the air. The whispers returned, louder this time, swirling around me like an angry swarm. I stumbled back toward the entrance, my heart racing. That's when I heard it. The sound of hooves pounding against the earth, echoing through the fields outside. It felt like the ground trembled with each noise, as if the barn itself was resonating with the sound. I ran to the door, my pulse thudding in my ears. I stepped outside, looking out over the fields. The sun had dipped low, and shadows stretched long across the ground. And then I saw it. A horse standing at the edge of the field, its coat dark and glistening. It was as if a piece of the legend had come to life right before my eyes. I was transfixed. I took a step forward, but the horse turned and bolted into the distance, a dark shape racing under the setting sun. Panic seized me. Had it just been a figment of my imagination? As I stood there, breathless, I felt a cold wind wrap around me and heard another whisper. This time it wasn't just my name. It was a warning. Someone was watching. I turned back toward the barn, every hair on my body standing on end. I knew then that I was not alone in this pursuit. Someone or something was following my every move. The threat was much closer than I had realized. That thought sent a shiver down my spine. What had I awakened? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. I had to figure out what was happening. The barn had felt alive, almost like it held memories, and the horse, was it real? Or just another trick of my imagination? I couldn't shove the thought aside. Something was drawing me deeper into this mystery. I stepped back into the barn, the fading light barely illuminating the darkness within. I needed more answers. My eyes were drawn again to the horseshoe. I picked it up carefully, brushing off the mud. The symbols around it now seemed even more vivid. They were like an ancient language begging to be understood. I tucked the horseshoe in my backpack, determined to research it later. The air felt electric, and my heart raced as I scanned the rest of the barn. The whispers continued, though I couldn't quite make them out. I turned toward the back wall where the shadows pooled like ink. A sudden creak sent chills down my spine. I was not alone. I forced myself to walk slowly toward the back, where a faint light flickered. As I drew closer, I could see a small window, maybe a foot wide, partially concealed by wooden shutters. I crouched down, peering through the cracks. My heart sank. A figure stood in the clearing outside, cloaked in darkness. I couldn't make out any distinct features, but the silhouette was unmistakable, tall and imposing. I felt a rush of cold dread. Were they waiting for me? Or were they connected to the horse? Before I could back away, the figure turned slightly, and in that moment, I caught a glimpse of something gleaming in their hand. A pendant? I squinted but couldn't be sure. Then they began to walk toward the barn. Panic set in. I needed to get out. I rushed to the front, but when I pushed open the door, an unearthly scream pierced the air, echoing off the barn's walls. It wasn't an animal sound, but something else. A mix of rage and sorrow reverberated through me. My body froze in place. Then I heard it again, the beat of hooves. This time it was closer, pounding on the ground like thunder. I took a chance and sprinted toward the edge of the field, adrenaline pulsing through my veins. I glanced back, but the figure was gone. It was just me and the darkening sky. I stopped at the edge of the trees, looking for the horse. Was it coming back? I felt drawn to the whispers again, urging me to go further. Fear held me back, but curiosity pulled me forward. Which was stronger? Just as I felt the weight of the decision bearing down, A silhouette emerged between the trees, a figure riding the dark horse. My breath caught in my throat. Whoever it was, they were coming straight for me. There was no turning back now. I turned to run, but the ground felt unsteady beneath my feet. The rush of wind slammed against me as I sprinted into the woods, heart racing. I could sense the presence behind me, felt it closing in, and I knew I had to find shelter. In the corner of my mind, the warning echoed louder. I was being hunted. I had awakened something terrible, and now it had my scent. I darted through the trees, branches snagging at my clothes like talons. The darkness felt alive, each shadow shifting and warping as I fled. My heart pounded in my chest, drowning out the sounds of the night. The screams from the barn echoed in my ears, a twisted reminder of what I had stumbled into. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. The air grew thick and heavy, and I realized I could no longer hear the hoofbeats behind me. I turned, peering back through the dense foliage. Nothing but darkness lay behind me. Had I lost whatever was pursuing me? Or was it waiting for the right moment to strike? I pressed on, desperate to put distance between myself and the barn. Just ahead, I spotted a small clearing, barely illuminated by slivers of moonlight. A feeling surged through me, a mixture of dread and hope. A place to pause, the perfect spot to collect my thoughts. I stepped into the clearing, breathing hard. My mind raced as I thought about the horse and the figure. Who were they? What connection did they have to this place? Then, glancing around, my eyes fell on something glimmering near a rock. I approached cautiously, the whispers from the barn still swirling in my mind. It was a pendant, similar to the one I saw in the figure's hand. My fingers brushed against its cool surface. It depicted a horse, but the details were intricate, almost mesmerizing. I flipped it over and saw symbols etched into the metal, exactly like those on the horseshoe. As I studied it, the whispers grew louder, almost like a chant riding on the wind. I felt lightheaded. My instinct screamed for me to drop it, but curiosity held me fast. What did it mean? Suddenly, a snap of a branch shattered the silence. I spun around, heart thumping in my throat. In the darkness, I saw a pair of eyes glowing, watching me, assessing me. The presence was back, but this time I could feel its intent. It wasn't just hunting, it was hunting me. I backed away slowly, clutching the pendant tightly, my knuckles turning white. Just as I turned to flee, a deep, resonant voice erupted from the shadows, booming and fierce. "You've awakened forces that should have remained undisturbed." I froze, recognition flooding my mind. It was the voice from the barn, echoing with the same rage and sorrow I had felt before. The figure slowly stepped into the moonlight, revealing an imposing silhouette, lined with armor that reflected the dim light. "Return what you've taken," it commanded, voice trembling with power. "You cannot contain the consequences." I glanced down at the pendant. Something inside me screamed to hold on to it, to understand whatever this was. But terror nestled deep in my gut. There was a choice to make, and I didn't know which path would lead to my salvation. Before I could decide, the figure extended a hand, and the ground beneath my feet trembled. "Time is running out. You have been warned." That's when I saw it, the dark horse appearing behind the figure, eyes aflame with an otherworldly fire. I stumbled backward, realization hitting me like a wave. I had awakened something powerful, and whatever this was, it was coming for me. I shouldn't have taken the pendant. That single thought consumed me as I stared at the glowing eyes of the horse. An eerie heat radiated from it, like the fire inside its gaze was capable of burning through all my fear. I wished for a way out, for the ability to disappear into the shadows. The figure's voice echoed, deep and unforgiving. "Return what's yours," it demanded again, and I could see the twitch in its muscles. Strangled emotions flickered across its face, blending rage with sorrow. This being, whatever it was, felt as trapped by this moment as I did. I didn't mean to. I managed to stammer, my voice barely a whisper. The pendant felt heavier in my hand, a forgotten weight tethering me to this reality. I looked from the figure to the horse and back again, trying to catch my breath. I just found it. You must be careful where you tread, the figure replied, its tone sharp as a knife. There are boundaries that should never be crossed. In that instant, I felt the ground shudder again, a warning perhaps. The thought of surrendering the pendant slipped steadily from my mind, replaced by an intoxicating curiosity. What was it about this relic? Why did it draw me in? Before I could allow any further hesitation, the horse stepped forward. My instincts told me to run, but a strange magnetism held me in place. The ground pulsed beneath its hooves, sending vibrations through the earth. I could almost hear ancient voices rising around us, whispering tales of power, loss, and retribution. Please, I finally said, desperation lacing my words. What do you want? What does it mean? The figure narrowed its eyes, sizing me up. It means you've disrupted a delicate balance. You have awakened the spirit of this land, and it will not rest until justice is served. Justice or vengeance? I didn't know what to believe anymore. I felt trapped between the mysteries of the pendant and the shadowy threats looming around me. Then, something unexpected happened. The horse whinnied softly, a sound that reverberated through the clearing. It took another step closer, and I felt my heart racing. Whether you realize it or not, you are part of this now, the figure said, its voice low and foreboding. You must untangle yourself from these events, or you will pay the price. Suddenly, a sharp flicker of light caught my attention. It came from the pendant, pulsating as if it had a heartbeat of its own. I turned it over again, examining the symbols. There was something familiar in them, a riddle just out of reach. Understand this, the figure continued, drawing me back to reality. The path you choose now will lead to salvation or to destruction. The choice is yours. In that moment, a chill swept through the clearing, and the shadows deepened. The horse's fire-like eyes seemed to pierce through me, unveiling fears I didn't know I had. My grip tightened around the pendant, and the implications of my next steps weighed heavily on me. Then, without warning, the horse reared back, and the figure raised a hand. I felt the air tremble as the atmosphere shifted, heavy with what was to come. I knew then that my time was limited. I needed to act. I had to make a choice. I could either turn and flee, abandoning all understanding, or I could stand my ground and discover the truth behind this dark enchantment. But just as I resolved to confront whatever waited ahead, the forest erupted with noise, a chorus of growls and whispers peeling away the last shreds of certainty. The danger was shifting once more, and I realized I was about to face something far worse than a mere choice. I took a shaky step back, heart racing as the growls echoed louder and closer. It felt like they were rising from the very ground beneath my feet, a warning call masking whatever was lurking just beyond the trees. The air was thick, charged with a tension that almost choked me. The figure seemed to sense my fear. You must choose now, it said, the urgency creeping into its voice. I could barely process its words. My instincts screamed for me to run, yet something deep within me resisted that urge. I was already tangled in this web, whatever it was, and fleeing didn't feel like an option. Then, the horse let out another low whinny, a sound filled with an unsettling mix of promise and danger. It stepped forward again, the glow of its eyes flickering like candle flames. I remembered how it had ignited that strange surge of energy in me, as if calling out to an ancient connection I didn't understand. Do you see it? The figure asked, gesturing toward the surrounding trees. I glanced around and my breath caught in my throat. Shapes shifted in the shadows, dark figures emerging from the underbrush, drawn by the disturbance. I could make out twisted forms, their eyes reflecting a violent hunger. The forest had awakened, and it was not friendly. In that moment I felt the weight of the pendant press against my palm, a stark reminder of what brought me here. It wasn't just a trinket, it was a key, but to what? I had to find out, to understand why I was suddenly woven into this dark narrative. "Fight!" The figure commanded, its voice firm. "Embrace the energy of the pendant, it's the only way." Fight? My eyes darted to the approaching shadows, panic clawing at my chest. Could I really confront whatever awaited me? The fear of the unknown gripped me tighter than the pendant, but just as that fear threatened to engulf me, I recalled that flicker, the gentle pulse of power that the pendant had offered. It felt like a beacon in the dark, urging me to stand firm. A growl erupted from the trees, and one of the figures lunged forward. My instincts kicked in. I raised the pendant, desperate to ward off the impending danger. The moment it came into the light, the ground trembled again. Energy surged from the pendant, filling the air with a bright, blinding light. The horse neighed loudly, and its eyes blazed with intensity. I couldn't explain what happened next. The shadows around me recoiled, as if the light had revealed their true nature. The figure became momentarily illuminated, and I caught a glimpse of something that could have been sadness etched across its features. Then everything went dark. The bright light faded, swallowed by an unnatural darkness, and I stumbled backward. The figures were gone, leaving only echoes of what might have been. "Now you know," the figure uttered, its tone softening. "But it is not over yet." Just as I regained my footing, a piercing shriek echoed through the clearing. It was a sound that shook me to my core. I turned toward the source, heart pounding. It was far from finished. In the shadows I spotted something moving again. I took a step forward, squinting into the abyss, suddenly aware that what had once felt like a choice was now a maze with no clear exit, and I was still at its center. I had to confront what lay ahead. The pendant gleamed in my hand, promising answers I wasn't sure I could handle. I stood frozen in place, gripping the pendant tightly. The air was thick with the echoes of that shriek, and the shadows seemed to pulse with life again. I felt the rush of adrenaline course through me, but it was quickly drowned out by the cold grip of fear. "Focus," I whispered to myself. The figure and the horse remained silent, watching, waiting. I couldn't let this moment slip away. I took a steadying breath and pushed deeper into the gloom, driven by a desperate need for answers and an urge to understand the connection I felt to this strange place. Then, amidst the murky shapes, I saw it, a glimmer of silver fluid wrapping around the base of a tree. The light flickered as if pleading for attention. I squinted, heart pounding, and approached cautiously. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't just an ordinary reflection. It was like a stream of liquid light reaching out in a delicate tendril. I reached out to touch it, my fingers just brushing the surface when a blinding flash illuminated the clearing. I stumbled back, eyes wide. A figure appeared within the light, standing tall and cloaked in shimmering fabric. The figure had no face, but its presence radiated a powerful energy that sent a thrill down my spine. "Why are you here?" the voice boomed, echoing through the trees. "I don't know," I breathed, my voice trembling. "I was drawn here, I need to understand everything." The figure tilted slightly, as if considering my words. "You are not the first to seek the truth." It gestured toward the shadows, where the growls started again, creeping closer. "And you will not be the last. But to understand, you must be tested." Tested? The word hung in the air, heavy and ominous. What did that even mean? Before I could think further, the shadows erupted. Figures lunged from the darkness, their eyes glinting like dull knives. I raised the pendant instinctively, and once again, light burst forth, illuminating the clearing. The shadows hesitated, momentarily repelled by the brightness flooding from my hand. Embrace it, the figure commanded, its voice cutting through the chaos. Show them your will. My heart raced, but I felt a surge of power ripple through me. I turned toward the advancing shadows, anchoring myself in the center of that blinding light. You will not take me, I shouted, the words spilling from my mouth as a new resolve formed within me. The shadows recoiled, growls morphing into hisses. The glowing tendrils of light wrapped around me, lifting my spirit. Then, in the midst of that surge, I sensed an unfamiliar force rising from the depths of the pendant. It was alive. A flicker of memories, faces and voices flooded my mind. It dawned on me then. My family, my past. This wasn't just about answers. It was about confronting all the secrets that led me here. Just as that realization hit me, the shadows squealed and released a deafening roar. They regrouped, their wild eyes locked on me, primal rage boiling beneath their flesh. In that moment of clarity, I understood one crucial truth. I was caught in the balance, not merely a spectator. This was my fight. I braced myself as the shadows tightened their grip, inching forward. There was no backing down. Let's go, I murmured, energy thrumming through my veins as I prepared for the inevitable clash. Then everything went still. The shadows paused, their growls fading into an eerie silence. It was as if they were waiting for something more, something beyond the darkness surrounding us. That's when I noticed the figure in shimmering light moving closer, its form undulating with a strange urgency. Whatever it was, it drew me in. But would it help me? Or would it lead me deeper into peril? The shimmering figure came to a stop just inches from me. It radiated a soft glow, its presence somehow soothing despite the chaos that surrounded us. I felt a strange pull toward it, but fear still clawed at my insides. What do I need to do? I asked, my voice wavering. What do you want from me? The figure raised its hands, and the light grew brighter, enveloping me in warmth. You must remember, your past holds the key to your future. I closed my eyes, images dancing behind my lids. Faces I hadn't thought of in years appeared, my parents smiling, laughter echoing around a family dinner table. Darker memories snaked in too, arguments, harsh words, and the final goodbye that had shattered our family. I shook my head, trying to push them away, but they seemed important somehow. Focus, the figure urged, its voice steady and calm. Embrace your light. It will guide you. I turned my thoughts back to the present, back to the shadows creeping closer, and realized I still held the pendant. Clenching it tightly, I felt the energy surge once more, an electric current weaving through my fingertips. Memories of bravery and love infused me, overshadowing the darkness of my past. The shadows stirred, their growls returning, hungry for what remained of my fear. I had to act. I refused to be afraid, I shouted, summoning every ounce of courage I had. The shadows halted again, as if my words had struck them. Instead of charging forward, they circled me, their forms weaving in and out of the light. The figure in front of me transformed, taking on the shape of a majestic horse, its mane flowing like the silver light that now enveloped us. Ride, it instructed, and suddenly I understood. If I could harness the energy around me, if I could become one with this being, perhaps I could face the shadows head-on. Without hesitation, I climbed onto the ethereal horse. It felt like I was melding into it, becoming part of something larger than myself. Resilient strength coursed through us both as we faced the growing shadows. When I looked down, I noticed a faint shimmer of silver forming beneath the horse's feet, illuminating the dark ground. It spread like a wave, pushing back the darkness. I felt exhilaration wash over me. I had power. We could drive these shadows away together. But just as my hope surged, an enormous shadow lunged forward, leaping into the light with a crackling sound. Its eyes bore down on me, a fierce intensity that threatened to engulf everything I stood for. I gripped the reins tighter, heart racing. "Show me what you've got," I cried. The words escaped my lips like a battle cry. The shadow snarled, darting closer, but I wasn't backing down. The horse surged beneath me, ready for the challenge. As it galloped, the power from the pendant and the light converged, creating a barrier against the advancing darkness. But then, in the midst of it all, I noticed a familiar face among the shadows, peering out with eyes full of sadness and betrayal. My breath caught in my throat. It couldn't be. Was this a trick, or was it another painful truth I had to face? "Wait!" I shouted, eyes wide with terror. "What is this?" The shadow shifted slightly, and for a moment it looked almost human. I felt the ground tremble beneath us. The confrontation was only beginning, and the answers I sought were closer than I realized. But this was more than a physical battle. It was a reckoning. I had to find out who this shadow was, and what it meant for my fight. My heart pounded as I stared into the shadow's face. Was it really someone I had known? I squinted, trying to make sense of the dark shapes swirling around us. I felt the horse beneath me tense, as if sensing my confusion and fear. With a deep breath, I focused again. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice rising above the growls. "Show yourself!" The shadow hesitated, flickering in and out, and for a fleeting moment I saw the face clearer. It was my brother, Alex, the one whose absence had haunted me most. Pain washed over me. I remembered our childhood arguments, the words we wished we could take back, and that final day when everything changed. "No!" I yelled, shaking my head in disbelief. The shadows closed in, their forms shifting as if sensing my turmoil. I couldn't let them take me down this path. "You're not real," I shouted, gripping the reins of the horse tighter. But part of me wasn't so sure. Maybe this shadow was a representation of my guilt. Maybe it was trying to make me confront feelings I had buried long ago. "Face it," the shimmering figure urged, now whispering in my ear. "You cannot defeat what you do not understand." I took a moment to breathe, searching for the strength I felt only moments before. I needed to open myself up to the truth. "If you're Alex," I called, "then you can't be a foe. You're my brother." The shadows flickered again, and I felt a surge of energy pulse through the air. There was a shift, a moment of clarity. The face of my brother sharpened in the darkness, a mix of hurt and confusion reflected in his eyes. "Please," he said, his voice a mere echo. "Let me go." "I can't," I shouted back. "I won't ignore you any longer." The shadows began to swirl faster, a chaos that threatened to engulf me. Fear rattled my resolve. What did I know about confronting this darkness? The horse reared back, sensing my distress. "Trust your light," the figure instructed, sharper now. "You are stronger than the shadows think." Suddenly, a deep rumble came from the depths of the darkness. The enormous shadow charged again, more aggressive now. I couldn't afford to hesitate. I focused on the pendant, its energy growing bright in my palm. "Together!" I shouted to the horse, and we galloped forward. I felt the barrier of light swell as we charged towards Alex's shadow. The shadows roared, their shape shifting wildly in response. But instead of dodging, I leaned into it. I could feel memories flooding back, each one reinforcing my resolve. The siblings we had been, the laughter shared, the love that once existed, it all rushed back like a wave. "You are with me," I cried, desperate to connect with the part of my brother that once stood next to me. At that moment the shadows seemed to still, and the air crackled around us. I felt the truth of our bond cutting through the fear, creating a bridge between us. "Please, Alex," I begged, "come back to me." Then everything shifted again. The ground shook violently as shadows erupted in every direction. "What's happening?" I shouted, panic rising in my chest. Everything felt unstable. That's when I saw it, a glimmering light breaking through the clouds of shadow. It wasn't from my pendant alone. It felt bigger, more powerful. It lit up everything around me, illuminating the darkness like daylight. But the shadows fought back fiercely, trying to pull me away from the light. The truth was there, but so were the fears I had tried to bury for so long. I couldn't lose this battle, not now when hope was so close. As the light grew brighter, I sensed that my next choice was crucial. I was standing at a precipice, and what I did next would either summon my brother back or condemn him to the shadows forever. The weight of it pressed down hard, mixing anticipation with dread. "Alex," I shouted, voice trembling, "help me fight this." And in that moment, I realized something else. Whether we were bound by darkness or light, this fight was only just beginning. I stood on the edge of the abyss, the shadows swirling closer as I confronted the truth of who was intertwined with these dark forces. The figure of my brother flickered amidst the chaos, a beacon of the bond we once shared. "I'm here!" I shouted again, desperation clawing at me, praying the light would hold against the encroaching dark. The horse beneath me felt powerful, its strength surging through me. Through the shadows I sensed the urgency in Alex's flickering silhouette. "Don't leave me," I cried, voice breaking. "You don't belong here." The shadows roared, and the deeper tones mixed with anguished cries echoed around me. I felt the force crashing against my resolve, the fear that Alex might never truly return, that I could lose him again to the shadows. Straining against the looming darkness, I closed my eyes, fueling my courage with memories of laughter, warmth, and love, the essence of our bond. "Fight with me!" I shouted, pushing forward as the ethereal horse galloped straight into the fray. The blinding light erupted from my open palm, the pendant pulsing with energy. Together with Alex, we charged forward, a surge of unity that momentarily stunned the shadows. As the light advanced, the dark shapes recoiled, snarling in frustration. I felt their anger, but it couldn't touch the truth I clung to, the understanding that this was not just a battle of shadows, but a confrontation of grief and love itself. "Alex, you're not gone," I yelled, determination flooding my words. "Come back to the light." For the first time, a flicker sparked in Alex's shadowy form. Recognition shimmered across his features, a momentary glimpse of hope. But just as quickly, the dark beings tightened their grip, reasserting their hold over him. "No," I screamed, panic rising. "I won't let you take him." In the fervor of the moment, the shimmering figure emerged again from the light, its voice ringing out. "You have the power within you. Remember your light. It is stronger than any shadow." I could feel the essence of my past, my family, all of it roaring within me. My grip on the pendant tightened. This was my moment to bridge the gap between the light and the darkness, to awaken the spirit of reconciliation that had been dormant for too long. "We can do this, Alex," I cried, interlacing my voice with the echoes of our memories. The shadows writhed, and my declaration cut through their grip momentarily. Suddenly, Alex's figure began to materialize more fully, a blend of shadow and light oscillating around him. I could see it in his eyes, recognition, conflict, and finally, the dawning of hope. "Hold on to me," I urged, as we charged into the dark mass together. The force of our connection pushed back the shadows, illuminating parts of the abyss that had long been shrouded. Fear transformed into strength. But the shadows weren't finished. They lashed out with renewed fury, a loud chorus of growls and banshee-like cries that vibrated through the clearing. The darkness swelled again, threatening to engulf everything in its path. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down. If we were to escape this, I had to anchor Alex, to free him from whatever had kept him trapped in this spectral hell. "Remember, Alex, remember us," I shouted, my heart pounding with the urgency of time slipping away. And then I saw it. The light, a beacon on the horizon. I turned to Alex, illuminating his shadowy form with every ounce of love I could muster. "You are not just a shadow. You are my brother." It happened in a flash. A binding force seemed to radiate from our connection, dissolving the encroaching darkness and reflexively pulling each shadow back in a violent swirl. Alex's form flickered, wavering between the light and darkness, but I held my ground, calling out for him to step into the light. "Take my hand," I cried out, reaching for him, determination surging through my veins like wildfire. The pendant pulsed brightly, sending waves of luminescence into the void. I felt the cold grip of shadows clutching at me, but I refused to be silenced. With one final push, the darkness crumbled against the cascade of light, forcing back the looming figures that sought to consume us both. Then, I saw it. Alex, fully realized and luminous, breaking free from the grasp of the shadows. We met in a collision of light, a whirlwind of connection and memory. Time slowed. Every breath, every heartbeat became a quiet acknowledgement of love. "I'm not leaving you again," I whispered through tears of relief, and together we stepped into the light, intertwined and resolute, leaving behind the shadows that had shackled us for far too long. Just as suddenly the clearing fell silent. The shadows receded, pulling back to the corners of the woods, impotent and thwarted. The ground beneath us settled, and as the last echoes of dark energy faded, clarity washed over me. But still, questions lingered. Had Alex truly returned, or was this a last reflection of my grief? Was the bond that brought us together everlasting, or did something darker loom on the horizon? I turned to look at Alex, his eyes reflecting a serenity that transcended understanding. In that moment of triumph, uncertainty still danced on the fringes of my mind. Perhaps the answers were not meant to be fully grasped, not yet. For now, I just stood, side by side with the spirit of my brother, both of us free. As we embraced the dawn breaking on the horizon, I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new journey, intertwined with a legacy that whispered through the trees, one that would always remain, a mixture of shadows and light, unresolved mysteries still waiting beneath the surface. And as we walked forward together, I carried with me the memories, some bright, some dark, but all entwined, promising to illuminate the path ahead.